Welcome. Let us take a look at the Sade Sati in Krishnamurti Paddhati. So I'm going to touch base on what is generally meant by Sade Sati and Shree Krishnamurti's views on Sade Sati and the transit rules in the KP framework. Now, Sade Sati generally means that when Saturn will be transiting in the 12th sign to the sign occupied by Moon. So the definition is Sade Sati means that Saturn will be transiting in the 12th sign to the sign occupied by Moon. So recently, I guess on January 16th or 17th, Saturn moved to Aquarius. Thus, the Sade Sati for people with Moon in Pisces has started. And these are the people who already have Pisces in their ascendant. And for everyone who will be born with Moon in Pisces until the Saturn is in Aquarius, which it is going to be for next 2.5 years. So all those future births will also be said to be under the influence of Sade Sati. So Saturn has moved to Aquarius, and in your birth chart, if Moon is in Pisces, or any person that's going to be born, if the Moon is in the Pisces at that time, then they will be said to be under the influence of the Sade Sati. Now, this is a very broad kind of a concept because if you look at the transit of Moon, when Moon transits into a sign, then it remains in the sign for at least 2 days, right? So in 2 days, a lot of births take place. And when I was Googling about the average daily birth rate, so daily so many people are born. So when Moon is in Pisces, so many people will be born, and everybody will be said to be under the influence of the Sade Sati. So this is a very broad kind of a concept. Now many negative things are attributed to Saturn, and for this reason people are very afraid of Saturn's transit from one sign to another sign. Krishnamurti has also mentioned that Saturn causes disharmony, dispute, difficulty, despondency, dejection. So many negative things are attributed to Saturn. So I guess that's one of the main reasons why the Saturn transit from one sign to another sign, especially when it goes to the 12th from Moon, it creates so much of buzz in the world of the Vedic astrology. But let me also tell you that Krishnamurti, when he is mentioning about Saturn's negative attribute, these are very general kind of thing he has mentioned about the nature of the Saturn. But he says that, and let me read this out for you. During Sade Sati, people get married, they have promotions, they make purchases of land, they construct houses, possess new car, and enjoy all fruits of life. So it's not that people who are undergoing Sade Sati will have these, will always have a negative result in their life. And if you look at this particular line where Krishnamurti has mentioned that the evil Saturn, so when Saturn is bad, evil in the horoscope, or a negative, and then it's going to create all kind of negative results because of its negative nature. So, but it's not that all Sade Sati is going to create negative results in the horoscope of all the persons who are going through the Sade Sati. So, Krishnamurti's assertion is that the astrologers who attribute any loss only to the 7.5 years Saturn has no experience and has not gained sufficient knowledge. Now, let me also share my own thoughts and observations about the Sade Sati and also about the transit of the other planets. The first thing that I have observed is that Saturn and also Jupiter transit results are overhyped. And these whenever Saturn and Jupiter move from one sign to another sign, then these are announced to be like a life-changing event. A lot of buzz is deliberately created using a very dramatic titles and thumbnails, especially on the YouTube. You can find a lot of videos, and so they tend to create some kind of a fear psychosis. And look at this, the these seems like some kind of a tears are dripping down, or the blood is going to dripping down because Saturn has moved into Aquarius, and the people with Pisces moon sign are in focus. So now these kind of dramatic thumbnails, I don't know what kind of fear psychosis they create. And take a look at these thumbnails. I don't know what this is meant to be. This is I don't think this is Shani Maharaj, or this seems to be like some devil or some alien. And now additionally, look at what kind of titles are created. They're full of spelling mistakes and very unimaginative titles, and you can make it out from the caliber of these kind of a language that what kind of people are going to talk about the Sade Sati. So my idea of telling all this is that don't get panicked by these kind of a dramatic presentation of Sade Sati that invariably creates some kind of a fear inside you. And second thing I have noticed is that good, bad, normal things happen during the Sade Sati transit of the Saturn. I have been keeping a tab of many horoscopes since a very long time, and I have not seen any unusual or repetitive pattern that could be tied up to the major transit of Saturn or Jupiter, let alone Sade Sati. These transits, I have not seen any major transits of Rahu, Ketu, Jupiter, or Saturn that you can take out of the context and apply to a lot of horoscope. Third is that the the results based on the transit alone has no substance. The good or the bad period should be identified by judging a horoscope in relation to the Dasha Bhukti and then the transit. A standalone Sade Sati transit system, the way it is talked about, is all meaningless. Thus, I can only say that a lot of these the videos that are generated on the YouTube are just for entertainment purpose only. You must look in this light only, that these kind of interpretation of Sade Sati, they are all meaningless. Shree Krishnamurti has rightly mentioned that one should know that Saturn is not the only planet, which indicates what a person can expect. Every planet contributes to certain event in one's life according to the Hindu system. That is what he is commenting on the traditional method, that even in the traditional method it's not just one planet. You have to look at all the planets. So this is basically, it means that Sade Sati result must depend on an individual chart, the chart and the dasha also. And like I mentioned, based on my own experience, I don't bother much about the transit of Saturn and Jupiter as a standalone transit, and I even don't keep a track of how these planets are going to change a sign, especially the transit of Saturn in the context of the Sade Sati. So I can say, or we can safely assume that a single planet standalone transit interpretation is a complete waste of time. You see, the planets are always in a transit, and the planetary movement is always creating a pattern. But this is just half of the picture. How this pattern gets reflected in your chart is also equally important, that we have to look into. Therefore, the horoscope plus the dasha, antar, prachantar, and plus the transit, this alone makes sense. But what usually happens is that a person might be running a bad dasha, antar, and it might coincide with the Sade Sati transit. And this becomes an opportunity for many astrologers to put the blame squarely on the Saturn transit. And I think this is what has made Sade Sati so notorious. Now, apart from this, the whole transit system in the KP is very different from the traditional method. So I would also take an opportunity to a little bit introduce what the how the transit results are interpreted in the KP system. Now, KP framework demands a certain discipline, and for this reason, you will not find many videos that tend to give you a very general Sade Sati result based on the Krishnamurti Paddhati. So let's take a look at the transit result interpretation and in the light of the KP framework. Now, when I was preparing this video, I came across a video by PVR on the Sade Sati with respect to the current Saturn transit in Aquarius. He has also mentioned that one has to look into the horoscope and the dasha, antardasha, etc. to get a whole picture. But he has also mentioned that generally, from the tradition system, the Sade Sati might be good for these signs and might have some problems from the other signs and might be bad from some of the other signs. But in KP, even this much is not possible. Like in traditional, you might say that Sade Sati might be good for the Mesh ascendant, but in the KP, it's not, even this much is not possible. So let's look at what kind of how the transit results are interpreted in KP and why they are so different from the traditional. Now let's take this Mesh Rashi chart, and now the Saturn enters Aquarius on 17th January, and it was in the Dhanishta Nakshatra. So whenever we are talking about the KP framework, then we have to look at the star, usually the star lord. So Dhanishta is ruled by the Mars. So when we are interpreting the Saturn's transit result within the KP framework, then you have to look at the KP's table of star lord and the sublord. That's this table, right? So when Saturn moves into Aquarius, and then until I think until the 14th of March 2023, the Saturn will remain in the star of Dhanishta, that's ruled by the Mars. This. Then Saturn will move into Rahu's star, Shatabisha. So now if we have to look at how a person with the Mesh Rashi will be affected by the Saturn's transit, then in the KP, the position of the Mars, you have to look at the ownership and the lordship of the Mars, and plus also the position. So if we look at the Aries ascendant, then you see that by default the Mars becomes the ruler of the first house and the 8th house. Now like we saw in the previous slide that PVR mentioned, that traditionally it is said that that for Aries ascendant, the for the Aries Rashi, the Sade Sati of Saturn will be good. But if you look from the Krishnamurti point of view, this is not good because it's creating a handshake between the first house and the eighth house. So that's not good at all. And because it creates some kind of a danger for the person. And on top of it, if suppose the in the chart of that person, let's assume that the Mars is in the 12th house, then this particular combination, the 1, 8 and 12, this combination is not good at all. It indicates that the person might even land into a hospital because of some danger. So you see this whole combination becomes very negative. But at the same time, let's assume this person's Mars is in the not in the 12th house but in the 11th house. That is in the horoscope of that person. Now when you look at this kind of a combination, when the Mars is in the 11th house, then you get a very different kind of a house grouping. Now it becomes 1, 8 and 11, right? 1 and 8 because Mars is the ruler of 1 and 8, and 11 because Mars is occupying the 11th house. So 1, 8, 11 combination is actually very good in the KP, and it indicates kind of a windfall and an income, sudden income, those kind of a thing. So you can see that the Saturn is very indifferent to Moon. In the KP framework, the Moon is not even considered at all. And this is true for every single Rashi. It doesn't matter. You have to look at that the Saturn is in the Dhanishta star until 14th of March, and therefore it's going to be in the star lord is going to be the Mars, and then you have to look at the Mars ownership and Mars position in the horoscope to make an interpretation, and Moon etc. is not even considered. So the KP's whole transit rule is very different, and then on top of it, you have to even consider these the sublots in the transit as well as in the natal chart. So it becomes a very complicated kind of interpretation in the KP framework. The transit result interpretation in KP framework is not easy. It is easy in the KP horary, but in the KP natal, it is not easy. It's not easy. So now, before I end this video, I must add that the KP transit rules for the natal chart are very complicated and that needs some more discussion. And for that, I'm planning another video that I'll share soon. Thanks for watching.